and a warm welcome to yet another episode of Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Paths. Today, we'll be striding on advertising industry. Now, this industry in India stands as a testament to the country's vibrant economic landscape characterized by adaptability, innovation, and a forward-looking approach to engaging with one of the world's largest and most diverse consumer markets. With the continuous vibrancy in the media landscape, advertising agencies are embracing the latest trends and technologies while focusing on communication that truly matters and carves a path for others to follow. Message that forge meaningful connections, inspire brand loyalty, and cultivate lasting relationships are at the heart of their philosophy. To deep dive into this vibrant industry, today we are honored to welcome Mr. Gautam Reddy, who is a visionary and a co founder and CEO of Pad and Hot Cult. This group aims to revolutionize the way creative solutions addresses business challenges while captivating the end customers. A very warm welcome, Gautam, to this episode of Digital Dialogues powered by CXO Digital Pulse.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure's mine. Looking forward to this.
Great, Gautam. So we'll start directly with the first question where we would like to understand what do you believe are the key elements that make an advertising campaign truly disruptive in today's media landscape?
There's only four things. I think the fourth thing is a fairly recent addition as far as Indian advertising goes, because I'll take you deeper into what I'm talking about. But needless to say, the top three things are consumer, competition, and category, and the fourth today is culture. Right, so I think consumer in the sense the basics, right, fundamentals. How do they approach buying in that category? What is the relationship with someone who already who exists in that category? If it's a fairly mature category, then they are likely to have some preference at that point, right? And what could be clear stimuli for the switch of preference, right, to actually manifest? I think these are some of the things that we need to go deep into, and needless to say, all of this include pricing, include retail environments where it is accessible, the product includes the story and the positioning, all of these aspects from a consumer lens, right? Second, what we need to understand as an agency that's providing solutions, for work to land, we need to understand category codes. Every category out there, either if it's a mature category, it already has very, very evolved codes. We need to understand over the decades how these codes have evolved and why. Category deploys a certain style of a marketing calendar or a certain style of marketing budgets, a certain style of a media exposure to a consumer. If we understand that, we're in a much better position to service the business or the brand and get them the desired closer to the desired objective, right? So that is the second piece. So deep understanding of category codes by virtue of how the business makes the brand manifest, in the sense why it operates a certain way within a category, which helps the brand grow in perception, in preference, in loyalty. All of that is likely to happen if we have a grip on the category codes. The third is competition. So needless to say, every penny out there, I think it's a battle on the street, right? It's the same consumer and people are trying to dissect share of pocket from the same consumer, right? And there's only incremental or sometimes negligible changes between product to product, right? So what exactly is the story we are saying, right? And who is it supposed to land with emotionally, right? All of these aspects then come into play if we take the competition matrix into dimension into the matrix as well, right? So who is claiming what position with the client, with the consumer, and what room does that leave us in terms of a consumer pain point that we can solve by narrating a story which is existing today, or which is likely consumer pain point, which is emerging and is a trend, that I can actually make that percentage of consumers my market share part of my market share. All of that can only come into reality, or can come into manifestation, if we also actively follow competition, right? Because they are going for this almost the same pocket, or a percentage of the same pocket, right? So that is the third piece. And now ever so important is culture. So back in the day, culture for India was a very united kind of a situation, right? In the sense, Mile Sur Mera Tumhara campaign landed across the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Swachhata Nirma campaign landed across the country, and typically the language was accepted if it was a dubbed output of a Hindi master, right? Accepted by consumers across the country, right? But now what's happened is the self identification and self image of every consumer, every 100 kilometers in India, north to south, east to west, you'll start seeing that they are very rooted in the way they are. They consume the things that have been passed on from generations, and they like to be communicated to in a certain way, right? All of these are becoming very, very distinct things that are changing as the decades pass by, right? So
Yeah.
back in the day, post privatization, 1991, when India announced privatization as an economy, I think it was anybody who had a license had a business. Anybody who had a business had a brand. I mean, to set up a manufacturing unit, to have certain 100 kilometers, square kilometers of consumers under your radius that you can logistically service, all of these were fundamentals of brand building. So the category was the brand. A name in the category meant they are a brand, right? And
Mm-hmm.
every 10 years things changed. In 2010, as in 1999, 2000, there was the birth of satellite television, right? There was the birth of western sitcoms coming in India, all the youth, so-called youth of that generation watching, right? There was a family planning angle that came into India. So all of that gave rise to certain subcategories and brands, and then there started, became a two-player market or a three-player market, like a close-up to a Colgate and say for Pepsodent or whatever, right? Back in the day. So there were about two, three players, and brands were fighting for share of voice and consumer attention. Okay, by 2011, let's push another decade, right? India
Mm-hmm.
was close to becoming a fully digitized, not fully digitized, but there was brands for all modes of the day, right? So in the sense, what you consume in the morning may not be what you consume in the afternoon, may not be what you consume in the evening. What you consume at a office may not be what you consume in over the weekend, may not be what you consume when you're hanging out with your friends. So moods of the day and all of this were getting facilitated, and different, like Maggie came in saying 4 p.m. snack, so a lot of players started dissecting times and moods, to sort of so from 2011 it's only evolving, right? So if you look at the dating ecosystem today, there's brands by emotion. The role of a Tinder versus the role of a I'm sorry, I'm not very familiar with the name, shadi.com, and everything in between that, right? So there's Bumble, there's, so it's brand by what are you in the mood for now, right? There are brands for every moment, right? Or every sort of turn of a consumer, right? So things have been evolving, and it's become a very competitive marketplace. Culture helps you land this conversation. After you cross category, consumer, and competition, culture became the added feature that helps you land this conversation more effectively with consumers today, right? And
Okay.
progress on your easily progress on your narrative. So you have to be hyper local. You have to be relevant. You should deeply be relevant to a smaller set of people, and brand has to learn to decentralize this. If a large brand is operating across the country, what they mean to the Tamil housewife will be different from what they mean to the Bihari youth, will be different from what they mean to the Maharashtrian office goer. But they're servicing everybody, right? So, how do they do
Mm-hmm.
it? Unless they decentralize strategy, unless they decentralize communication and bring in culture as an important aspect, stop worrying about only the first three C's at the fourth C, then they're likely to sort of nurture this narrative with their consumer better and still participate with the same or improved market shares,
Okay. It
right?
was a great walkthrough from where we started in terms of advertising to where we are right now.
Mhm.
Earlier, it was a national voice. Now it's more of a cultural blend is a necessity, while the fourth point, but still it's a necessity. So Gautam, what do you think comes up as a key challenge as well as an opportunity when you're blending the storytelling with the brand message, ensuring that you come up with a very impactful content?
From a client standpoint or from an agency standpoint?
From your standpoint, I would say.
From the
We'll
agency.
come to the we'll come to the brand later on.
Okay, so
Right now, from the agency
from the
standpoint.
service provider standpoint, uh, while 70% of it is the same,
Okay.
grappling with the 30%, I think, is always been a problem for a service provider. I think in today's ecosystem, it's important for service providers to hack that 30% and improve and build, and be ready for future uncertainties or future developments in what is expected of a service provider. So when I say service percent, 70%, what I mean is, I mean your how you arrive, what is your process to a solution, what is your media strategy against which content is being developed. All of these have been there in the business from the day it was only all India radio, to the day it was newspapers, to even today when you have multi digital sort of penetration possibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's been there in the business. It will continue to be there because that is the fulcrum of how you can get objective met for a brand, right? But I think the bigger challenge that agencies have to grapple with is how relevant are they to the categories in the consumer ecosystem? As in, are agencies developing their own uh, perception of marketplaces in terms of culture codes, right? Are we able
Okay.
to break it down for our internal process? If a brand operating in a certain hyper local, say certain region of the country, they are very strong, and they're entering another region of the country. First, we need to understand why are they strong in that region. Second, we need to understand what are the challenges they're going to face in entering another region, right? So, us having some immersion culturally as an agency is critical. A lot of agencies have spoken about diversity. I'll tell you where diversity starts and where it ends, right? Because I've been part of network agencies both in the Publicis and the WPP groups. So, I think
Okay.
where it starts is, do we have people from different walks of life, socio-economic strata, which is bound to happen because an editor or a graphic designer needs only certain kind of skill sets. A copywriter may need slightly better, exposure and social skills and education. Head of a business might be an MBA, right? So that diversity is anywhere there across an agency workflow, anywhere you walk into the country. Okay. Secondly,
Mhm.
when they talk about diversity, they talk about people from different regions, and it stops there. In the sense, in Mumbai, if someone has someone from Tamil Nadu or Chennai, and someone has someone from say Bengal, right? They say हमारे टीम में एक बंगाली है, एक तमिल है, एक उड़िया है, हम multicultural perspective लेके आ रहे हैं. But the reality is where it stops. It starts there where you're able to identify a person saying he's a Ghosh, he's an Iyer, he's a, it starts there. It stops at how long have these guys been in Mumbai or Delhi? Have they been there for over a decade? In that case, how are they relevant to their homeland? बिकॉज अगर इनका घर इधर चल रहा है, इनके बच्चे इधर है, इनका फैमिली इधर चलता है, यू नो इधर इनका पूरा दुनिया बस गया है, तो अभी उसको क्या पता है कि ऑन द स्ट्रीट लेवल वहां पे क्या हो रहा है पॉप कल्चर वाइज? हाउ डू दे इवन नो
Okay.
स्लैंग हैज चेंज्ड, right? They will not know.
Mhm.
That diversity stops there. So the reality of diversity is you get high skilled people who understand the construct of a campaign, understand how to approach a brand's problem statement, and then you have layers of people woven in who are relevant for their specific micro tasks, right? That is where diversity needs to land, which means hybrid environment of working has to manifest, expertise across different cultures has to come in, and then we can all leverage the tools that are disposable, like platforms, algorithms, media options which are conventional, all of them, right? But step one is to make the product tighter, and to make the product tighter we have to, where diversity stopped, we need to reopen that and say idhar se diversity I have to go deeper, right? Today there is
Mhm.
LGBTQ, it is greatly appreciated in society, right? Today there is a voice of women in India, right? There is, feminism is coming down, in the sense everybody says I don't need being talking about feminism is being someone who's anti-feminism, because today everybody is equal. You don't need to talk about feminism, right? Education standards are the same. There are some social atrocities because they are called the weaker sex, which I don't believe they are, but there are some social atrocities which need to be policed and governed. But in no way are they the weaker sex. So my point is, diversity has to be opened up in an agency, because you are talking to that diverse a consumer landscape. So internally, if the lens are not being applied, it will
Mm-hmm.
not land externally, right? Even though the client may approve it, it will not
Mm-hmm.
land the way it is supposed to externally. So diversity as a subject has to be opened up, and supply chains
Okay.
have to be reimagined in the agency business. How to do it? Like anything good, it will take time. You have to make micro tasks of what you want to do to improve the condition. Have a short term goal for a year or two set on a table, and then sort of work your way up that, because if you have covered that ground, you're already ahead of 50% of the agencies, right? So I think hacking diversity is one of the key things from
Mhm.
an agency supply chain perspective that needs to come in.
And what from the side from the brands?
From the brands, it is acceptance of the obvious. Brands need to decentralize.
Mhm.
One India CMO is not going to be enough. Brands need to look at markets as self-sustaining units. The market of Tamil Nadu, the market of say Punjab, the market of has to be decentralized, and you need independent thinking on the brand and consumer engagement in each market. So the brands need to accept that there needs to be more work put into storytelling than it used to be before. There needs to be more effort in dissecting regions and breaking regions into more meaningful. Unilever having a Dakshin team is not enough.
Mhm.
Unilever needs to have many more teams, and under Dakshin there need to be sub teams, right? I'm saying brands need to accept this and start working ahead of the curve, because typically what happens, it's like a chicken and egg story, right? Does the brand move first or the agency move first? But in my opinion, agency can move first because it's lighter weight. It is never as big as a brand organization. It's, you don't have to pull, the inertia is much more in a brand, in a marketing function, or even at the operations of a brand, right? There are more people they employ, blah blah. But if the agency does it and the brands are not open, then whose fault is it? Who has done it too early, right? So I'm saying it's a chicken
Mhm.
and egg story. Everything needs to
Okay.
manifest at the same time, which is why brands become very important to this conversation, because together we want to win marketplaces. Agencies are but a cog in the wheel, right? A brand
Mhm.
is holistic. It is beyond just agency partners, right? So
Okay.
how are the agencies, how the brand looking at it is equally critical, and
Okay.
that's why I said, are you talking from an agency perspective or a brand perspective? I hope I was able to.
Definitely, yes. It definitely, it's good that we discuss both the angles because uh, the story is pretty different on both the levels. It's
Yeah,
about the acceptance, the reality, and from agency side, it's more about putting it into implementation and execution.
I would say
Um,
it is not different, but I would say it is.
the
Um,
two sides of the same coin.
yeah, it's a deepening of the value chain. At the
Mhm.
top of the value chain, if you have a problem, no matter how deep the other layers are, that it's never going to meet synergistically. So top needs to be even more aware, even more alert of what are the smaller trends that are emerging and how to solve them, because agencies can come up with a part of the solution. What I'm trying to say is brands have to think at a much more macro level, right? So
Mhm.
agencies can solve
Okay,
regional problems,
sure.
agencies can solve skill-based problems, but agencies cannot solve all the problems the brand has.
So I wanted to move on the platform space now. Now, digital platform has taken the entire advertisement industry on a stride. So, in your experience, how has this evolution of digital platforms influenced the strategies of creating this disruptive content?
So I'll sort of reframe the question for myself. I'll take the liberty, correct me if I'm wrong. So
Sure.
what I would say is, if you look at media as a landscape, if you pull up the last 2 3 years or 5 years worth of data, I would say COVID also is important to consider, because that has increased the speed of digital adoption. digital behavior from generations, from the baby boomers, that we call Gen X, to Gen Y,
Mhm.
to Gen Z, to millennials, Gen Y, and then Gen Z, and now the generation coming up is Gen Alpha. So I would say that there's been a significant shift or percentage shift in the COVID years of digital adoption, but also there has been a decent amount of dilution from what happened from during the COVID years back to normal habits of consumers. Okay, so
Okay.
coming to think of it today, uh, it's very hard to say uh, what is the forecast for print, what is the forecast for outdoor, out of home, right? It's very hard to say. And why, as someone sitting in the thick of the action for so many years, why I'm finding it so difficult to call it that it is done or it will be done, is because consumer life moves in cycles, right? For all you know, tomorrow, 10 years down the line, a generation may come and say, we want to detox from digital. They may it may become normal not to be accessible on a mobile phone. It may become normal, right? My point
Mhm.
is, you can never tell which way the pendulum is going to swing. Which way is the pendulum swinging currently in a 1 to 2 year horizon? I think that is something we can forecast. And
Mhm.
from that sense, I do see that there's been a huge sort of um, enablement of hyperlocal through digital. So I think enablement, or you can even say pressure on brands to perform hyperlocally through digital. So
Okay.
digital has made both decentralization easy, and at the same
Mhm.
time, it has made the needs of content very demanding. You can easily decentralize because you can do analytics from your dashboards of a certain geographical extent. You can actually carve out a geographical extent, certain square kilometers, and you can analyze data at that level, right? That is the
Mhm.
advantage it is throwing at you. But also, you have to provide solutions to address that problem statement which comes out from the analysis. And that is a
Okay.
demand, that is an ever growing demand, to find a micro influencer who can carry the message, to find an A-list celebrity who can carry the values, right? And how do I map this A-list celebrity's message of the brand to this tactical Diwali requirement which I'm talking to a micro influencer? Make sure that everything is aligned as a campaign, right?
Mhm.
Everything is aligned as a narrative. So the demand is also increasing with the convenience of being able to analyze hyper locally. So with every
Okay.
superpower you have, you're given your, I mean, that's a Spider-Man line, right? There's a responsibility with every power, right? With every power comes a responsibility. I think the responsibility of content curation has increased with the convenience of hyperlocal digital segmentation, right? You can segment your
Okay.
consumer, but you have to service the consumer, right? And that is where
Okay.
the challenge is. So I would say the the ability to map everything under one tight umbrella, right? A consumer of a certain area, the digital behavior of that consumer, and how that implies to them translating into either a physical transaction or a digital transaction. Understanding that, and understanding the supply chain and service partners for a specific area. So put
Mhm.
running that as a tight unit today transcends the conversation that we are currently having about what precedes digital or conventional. Digital and conventional will always be there, and they'll always, like I gave you an example, 15 years from now there may be a generation that says no technology that makes me easily accessible, because definitely human race would have abused it by then. And there's going to be a time like that, right? Saying the number of handsets we use is consuming so much titanium from the earth, and there's handsets become more expensive by virtue of that people might be leaving utilization of handsets and dropping their handsets. So my point is, anything can happen. So I'm saying what transcends and goes a notch higher is the ability to create these micro level universes for brands.
Okay.
It's the brand
And
which
as you're saying about the micro level universes, I understand a lot of data driven insights get into that micro aspects. So what is the role of this data driven insights in crafting the campaigns to capture that global attention?
I think briefs are becoming more and more media heavy. So, and
Okay.
which means that media understanding of a consumer and media penetration to reach a consumer is is getting married into consumer behavioral insights and human truths at a faster pace than ever before. Earlier, you could crack a campaign and you could say, "This is how I want to." This is how, because of the limited media availability, this is how I want to sort of deploy this campaign. So
Okay.
A plus B plus C can be a campaign, A plus C can be a campaign, B plus C can be a campaign, only A can be a campaign, only C can be a campaign, right? In terms of media opportunities. But today, there's a trillion media options, right? Which media option will help land this objective faster is actually the first thought on the table, supported with how is the consumer behavior and what is the idea, right? So I would say now the game is to understand deeply what each platform can do. On the same day, I'm on at least 7 platforms consistently. I do use YouTube every day. I do use mail every day. I do use, OTT apps every day. I do use a fintech app every day. I do use a news app every day. I do use a social networking app every day, right? So my thing is, every human is at least on 7 or 8 platforms every day. Now, how to render a campaign to that human or to that set of humans? As you can see, media is deciding what the campaign should. The first thought has to come from a media lens, right? And
Mhm.
that is what has been changing over the years, especially with the role of digital in enabling this, right? That has become so. Media planning as a team should not be a, a team that follows a campaign idea. In fact, it should be a team that writes the master brief along with brand planner or planner who's looking at consumer category and competition. So a media planner,
Okay.
they have to come together to write a master brief, because idea has to sell on as much on what is the quality of the idea, as well as much as it on how well it can be distributed, how the idea can be distributed, right? So
Okay.
I
And
hope
as
I
you
sort
mentioned,
of answered your question.
yeah, for sure. So there's another thing, Gautam, as you mentioned about the platforms and the kind of brief is coming from the brands. The consumers are also consuming the content across various platforms. Their consumption needs have also evolved. If I talk about in coming 2-3 years, with the evolution of platform, the content formation, what are the key trends that you foresee from the perspective of content consumption?
So I think non-intrusive content consumption, brand consumption is going to be a huge trend, right? So advertiser-funded programming, where a show is sponsored by a brand, where the brand is barely visible, but the values of the brand are getting communicated, and people are coming to
Okay.
watch the content, not the brand, right? Is going to become something, primarily because entire India can now skip ads on YouTube. Either you can select manually to skip an ad if you're on a freemium model, and if you're on a subscription model, then you can choose where you get ads, where you don't get ads, etc., etc. So India, down to the blue collar, the lowest level of socioeconomic strata, has a choice now at less than like a rupee a day to actually cut out ads, right? So how seamlessly can you make it a part of their everyday life? And if content, roti kapda makan content, right? Entertainment, let's not call it content, because sports is entertainment, gaming is entertainment, a a sitcom like a television show is entertainment, OTT show is entertainment, stand-up comedy is entertainment, Instagram reel is entertainment. There's so many formats, roti kapda makan and entertainment. So I think for brands, it's very important to become seamlessly a part of entertainment, where subconsciously the values of the brand are getting communicated to the consumer, because consumer is increasingly going to block or reject advertising. Apple iOS already has a feature as of 1 year ago, where you can allow what cookies are shared, what trends are shared with the developer of the software. Like you can decide what data Apple can read from your handset on each app, and it asks for permission each time, right? I think that is going to become that is now asking for permission. Tomorrow it will ask for permission. Otherwise, so I'm just saying the narrative will switch completely in about 2 years. Every app will have this. Every software company will. Every big tech company will have to deploy, because that is how it gets democratized. Someone starts it and then it becomes a market standard and everyone has to. So non-intrusive is what agencies need to think, to be able
Okay.
to help brands, not just today but in the future as well.
Apart from non-intrusive, is it more about micro-personalized content also, if that is what is being looked upon?
So we just sort of spoke about this a short time ago. So micro personalized also is a given, because of the amount of data you're getting from different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
The owner is the brand manager. They have to sit and analyze, if I want to affect a 0.1% or 0.5% market share, who should I target on which platform, what should be the cap. So micro personalized is already a given. I am talking about one step ahead, right? So micro personalized is already part of everyday brand activity, and if
Mm-hmm.
it's not, then brands have to sort of chip away at it and start building that kind of marketing culture in their organizations. Yeah, but what I was talking about is one step ahead, non-intrusive.
Okay.
So now I'm still okay with every fifth scroll on my Insta feed being
Mm-hmm.
sponsored ad. Like if the stories are swipe moving, every fifth, I think at the moment algorithm works like that, every fifth, 10th, 15th is an ad, sponsored ad. Tomorrow Instagram may drop that also, because consumers find it, they may see drop off at the every time an ad comes, they may see people shutting the app, right? Then
Uh-huh.
game is how you sort of make it non-intrusive. It shouldn't stand out as an ad. It should
Okay.
be content, right? It should be something that they're entertained with, which becomes a purpose of the brand getting translated to the consumer. Which is why I'm
Okay.
saying surrogate through pop culture, surrogate presence of a brand, and the volume of surrogate presence in terms of media spends for a brand needs to increase for it to stay alive, right? That is critical.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how are the brands or say media agencies ensuring that the ethical practices are also well incorporated while they are strategizing their
I would
advertising
say I would say
space?
nobody cares. I'm being very honest with you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if I was to sit on top of a and even trumpet and someone is giving me an award for this, I would in all honesty have to sort of decline the award and say that is not top priority.
Okay.
Agencies today work on stickiness. Poonam Pandey's death was promoted
Mm-hmm.
by the leading agency, fastest growing agency in India right now, right? I don't think these meters have to be taken care of by agencies, primarily because brands are capital first organizations. We work in a capitalistic country, democratic capitalistic country. So I think governance should be left for regulators, right? I would say your IMAI, and there's tons of people, right, who can sort of govern and censor, right? I think that work should be left to regulators, because there is no ethicality. Every micro strain of data is being leveraged. Every every news current affairs feature that is getting some attention is getting leveraged. It is not going to change because it's a competitive world, right? So regulation and governance has to be, that role of a big brother has to be played by someone else. So I'll tell you one small example. You know how there's something called POSH, prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. There's a governing body which a central HRD ministry actually deploys, and you have to have POSH compliance after you're a certain size. Any organization, SME or otherwise, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that adds a lot of feathers to you, and you can also be penalized. So, is that happening with regulatory bodies in the content space, regulatory bodies in the advertising space? Are they able to penetrate and actually enforce? Do they have the budgets for it? Do they have people watching all the work done by different agencies in different markets and constantly enforcing ethicalities and moral meter into it? Either the brand pays for it or the agency pays for it, or whatever they both decide, right? Is that being done? I think the answer to that question is a resounding no. So don't kill the messenger is what I'm trying to say. The messenger is just doing their job.
Mhm.
Talk about the king who's actually sent the messenger out to play in this field. The king chooses which field. Let the king start working now. I think you should leave it to the regulators.
So, would it be fair to say then, Gautam, that the regulatory bodies are there, the regulations are there. It's just that the implementation is not happening.
Yeah, I mean, see, I've been in this space for what, 15 years now. I've been running my own shop for about 13, 12 to 13 years. It'll be 13 years by end of this coming financial year, will be 12 years, and then I'm entering my 13th year. Not once have I been called upon by any organization or body, be it the ad clubs or be it, on top of that, like the media related verticals or departments in every government. Not once have I been called for a session on governance and my take on it and participating in it. Maybe I'm not big enough as an entity.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know who they are consulting with, but nothing is getting enforced. Nothing is getting regulated. I don't have to clear certain levels before I release a campaign, right? It's left to the brand's legal team to decide. So if I'm working with Godrej legal team decides whether this campaign can go out. There is no body above that. Whereas for
Mhm.
cinema, for broadcasting and cinema, you have censor certificates, right?
So, any specific reason that you would attribute to this ignorance of regulations?
I would say the market is too small. If anything has enough revenue in it, everybody will want a pie. So if regulation has to happen, someone has to say this market is now big enough in India. It's an alternate stream. Entertainment, the way it is happening in theaters, OTT, and satellite is not the only way. Or audio platforms like Spotify or JioSavan. I don't know how regulation is there also in terms of content. But my question is, if they can look at advertising industry at large, other day I was reading an article about how Instagram promoted gun violence, or Instagram promoted corruption, or Instagram promoted terrorism, right? Actually, Instagram wouldn't have promoted it. Instagram would have facilitated by the power of the platform, right? But I'm saying
Mhm.
that kind of a thing is happening in America. It's not happening in India, because there people's problems are slightly more advanced. It's not roti kapda makan entertainment. There's a lot more right in their priority order. So organically things are getting governed because politicians have to act to the needs of the voter. In India, the voters needs are not that defined yet when it comes to
Mhm.
governing sensibilities, right? That take is not woke, that take is too dated. All of that doesn't come to mainstream ever on advertising per se, so I don't see the need for anybody else to intervene. I think the powers that be need to get in and start regulating and building bodies, having representation from different parts of the market, different skill sets within marketing and advertising, and start working on building some regulatory sort of compliance guidelines. I have not, nothing has come to my table. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I'm practicing in this trade for so long. I run my own shop. Nothing has been served to me saying, here's a guideline you need to follow.
Great.
Yeah.
With this, Gautam, we conclude our conversation. It was definitely an enlightening discussion. It gave us insights into the crafting disruptive campaigns, leveraging data driven strategies, embracing the evolving media landscape, and the actions on regulations and compliances. It was definitely illuminating. And we have underscored also the importance of connection with the local audience at a very personal level as well.
Mm.
Thank you so much for being there with us today.
Pleasure's mine. Thanks a lot for having me. I think I'm deeply grateful for asking me these inciting questions. Also, sort of revises some concepts in my head as to what I'm doing every day and what I should be spending my time on. So I really appreciate that, and thanks for taking the time out and doing this with me today.
Great. And to our audience, thank you for joining us on this journey, and do keep watching the space for more insightful conversations with the CXO community. Till then, take care.
Cheers. Have a nice day, everyone. Take care.